Hello, viewers. Such a joy to have you join us on set for this edition. This is a legacy edition as we prepare towards Father's Day. You know, in our church, one of the things that we celebrate is to celebrate fathers and fatherhood. In the Word of God, we are told that 3 times every year, men ought to come together and interface with one who is their source and their sufficiency. Annually, globally, fathers are celebrated in the month of June, actually the 3rd Sunday of every month of June. We've been privileged in our church in times past to host our resource person on Saturday. He is a foremost thought leader in our nation and in our continent. He is none other but the CEO, the founder of Alder Consulting. Joining me on set today is Mr. Leke Alder. Such a joy and honor to have you here today, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for obliging us.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to the 28th of June when you will be live in the house to download. I mean, those experiences in time past just leave you awed. And I mean,
I'm looking forward to it too.
Oh, we're counting down, sir. I'm so excited. Thank you for accepting to be our blessing again this year. So today, as we begin our conversation, I noticed that one of the things that you do as a social responsibility initiative at Alder Consulting is Stop the Bashing Project. I saw it, on your platform. And I wanted to ask you what gave rise to this and what has been the success rate so far.
Well, first of all, thank you once more for inviting me. I believe that womanhood should be respected because women are veritable resources, not only for men, but also for the world. And when you begin to abuse a source of blessing, then there's something wrong. And I began to get mails from a lot of young people about abuse in relationships and everything. So I decided to start a campaign against the bashing of women, especially in relationships. And I don't think there should be gender violence. I know that there's also women that bash men, but the preponderance tend to be the other way around.
Yes, I agree.
And I just had to fight for it with my moral voice.
And what has been the success rate so far?
Oh, it's been good. At least there's awareness. You find that most of these things are cultural. A lot of us came from homes where women were bashed, where mothers were bashed, where beating up of a mother seems to be the norm. And men display their virility through violence, And part of it also is that the men had psychological problems.
Okay.
And they didn't have access to someone who can deal with those psychological issues. Because you must have psychological problems if you think that to be venting your anger on your wife, because most of the time it is this woman who take care of the children, who take care of everything. So, I mean, at least we've created awareness, and I'm hoping for a generation of young men who don't do all this crazy stuff and respect women and respect womanhood.
Wow. So, like you said, for some people, the reason why they do this is because they have no other template.
Yes, they have no other template. They had bad examples. They had bad mentors. And children learn a lot from parents. You find that some people are just preconditioned to think in a particular way. It's like they were brought up by fearful fathers. Fathers who come in one way and the children flee the other way. So that's what they know. They don't know any other way. Now, that's not excusing bad behavior. But I'm just saying that sometimes that is the source of these things. Because if you don't see anything wrong in pugilism in the first place, and then beating up a woman, and then beating up the mother of your children, and beating up someone that you said you loved, and you made an oath to protect and to care for, there's something wrong. It's a psychological problem.
Wow.
Some of it is psychiatric problem, actually.
Wow. Interventions actually needed.
Yeah, and I don't think, because it's, there's this thing about African culture and everything. Some of the things that we call African culture are not really African culture. They're just things that we impose or superimposed, and we
It's finding an excuse for personality disorders.
Exactly. And until we speak against those things, most people will not know. They would just take it as norm. So that's what I was fighting. It was the cultural thing that I was fighting against, actually, the psychological posture of the average young man who thinks that he can take it out on his girlfriend, on his fiancée, on his wife, and the young man who descends into the gutter in his home. There's something wrong.
Wow. I read a book years ago by Edwin Lewis Cole, Strong Men in Tough Times. Edwin Cole actually had a very strong men's ministry when he was alive. One of the things Edwin Cole mentioned in that book, in his many years of ministering to men, was that men who end up being abusive are men who grew up in homes where their fathers were abusive and they never forgave their father. They never resolved what they grew up seeing in their heart. So they grow up and repeat exactly the same thing that they were embittered about.
And it's funny, when you have a situation like that, you can react either way. For example, if you have a father who is stingy, you can resolve that you are never going to be stingy in life, or you can end up being stingy. So the different factors, different circumstances predispose people to certain things. Another area that we need to look at is secondary school. The bullying in secondary school and the way seniors treat juniors in secondary school. Some people were just sadistic. In secondary school, I had seniors who were sadistic. I mean, they were just sadistic, and
there's no milder way to state it.
Because it's sadism, it's sadism to...
Can you derive pleasure from the pain of another?
For the pain of another person. In fact, it's almost... some people are tending towards sociopathy.
Wow.
And I worry about those things. And the sad thing about it is that you can be blind. When you stand in front of a mirror and you can't recognize yourself, you have a problem. But if the values from the home are not strong, then there's nothing to counteract those things. Then you have to learn from an external source that this is not the way it's supposed to be. That there are homes where there's so much peace and joy and happiness, and that there need not be any fight in a home. In fact, it's an anomaly. One of the things we teach, which is wrong, is that in a marriage, if you've not fought, then you've not had a relationship. Says who? I mean, you think that they are quoting Isaiah or Jeremiah or something when they say certain things. Says who? Where did we get all these things from? So we are conditioning young men, with wrong ideas, wrong notions. They are preconditioned from secondary school. They are preconditioned from homes. I mean, the idea that at a point in this country, raping of young girls was considered virility is troubling. When I was in secondary school, it was not something that people frowned upon. It was conquest. It was something that boys boasted about. Now, until some people rose up and said, this is wrong.
Yes, it's criminal.
It's very criminal, and everything. And then they don't know the damage that they do. Because you do enormous psychological damage that somebody may never, ever recover from. Because it's a violation of being. You break something on the inside, and it's going to take the extraordinary grace of God to put back that inside. And young boys and girls are boasting about these things. And some in this day and age are actually posting videos of rape. How is that even possible? And it also speaks a lot to our society, where such a thing can go on and somebody can get away with it.
An erosion of values.
Yes, that's the contextual problem of the erosion of values in society as a whole. So all these things are coming at young men and everything, and they are manifesting wrong traditions and wrong cultures and wrong thinking. And that's why we have the anomalies that we have in society, where what is right becomes wrong and what is wrong becomes right. And then you have the culture of might, where might is right. And you can't have might as a moral gradient. It's not possible. There's something wrong with that. Because it means that the weak in society will never be protected.
So we can say otherwise that it's one thing for a child to be born, it's another thing for a child to be brought up.
Yeah, nurture matters. Some of it is nature, some of it is nurture. And the Bible balances both. For example, it says that train up a child in the way it should go. It will not depart from it. And another translation says that if you see your child bend in a particular way, don't discourage him. Just push him along according to his gift and his talent. But the Bible also says that train up a child in the way he should go. So it's nurture and nature. You have to balance the two.
Both.
You have to. It's a balance of both.
So parenting must be by design, not by default.
It's the mistake we make about parenting is that we think it's biological procreation. And go and check people who did not have proper parents or good parents. They never regard those people as their parents. If you have a father who never cared for you, never paid your school fees, never cared whether you fed or not, and just threw you to the dogs and just abandoned you, it's hard for you to see that person as a parent. So our concept of fatherhood is wrong, it's procreational, whereas in the Bible it is not.
Wow. So, many things are coming at me as you are speaking, Mr. Alder, today. A man and his wife went for a marriage conference. We went for a conference, and then the pastor who was speaking at the point said he wanted all widows to step out. And then this woman was stepping out. And the husband said, "You are so deaf. Can't you hear? They're asking for widows to step out." And the woman turned to the husband and said, "Are you alive? Is this how men who are alive behave?"
That's a great indictment.
Because you said something about, some fathers who, I realize that there are different types of fathers. There are some fathers who are absentee fathers, and there are fathers who are uninvolved fathers. And then we have fathers who are abusive fathers. And then we have fathers who are model dads. Yeah. And I think what the essence of celebrating fathers, in a time like this is for us to say it is possible for every man to become a model father. It does not matter the mold that molded you. You can choose your narrative from here. You may be an offspring of the past, but you're also a parent of the future.
Yes, but you can't be a victim of the past. You can't, the past is the past.
The past is
you
the past.
have a chance to determine your future. You have a chance to determine what you want to be. In the same way that you decide to become an engineer or a lawyer, and you can't decide to be a good father. And I had a very good father. My father, I still miss him. He died 5-6 years ago. And he was such a good father. Such a good old. He was in his 80s when he died. And he was a good father. And then I also had a good father-in-law who was very close to my dad, and they were friends, and they shared the same values and everything. And I miss both of them. I really, really, really miss both of them. Now, when I was young, my father were strolling on the streets, and he's pointing to different signboards, and he'll tell me, "What is that?" I'll say something like fashion. Now, I remember I'm 2 or 3 years old at this time, and he'll say, "Spell fashion," and I will say, "F-A," at that age. And he's taking me through all these things, and he'll give me a book of drawings, and he showed me. So, it's funny. The things that motivate children are very simple things. It was enough for me to know that I'll be given the leg of a chicken. I'm not talking the thigh. The leg of a chicken, the neck of a chicken, some gizzard, some little bits of pizza. That was enough motivation for me to come first in class. So because children don't understand poverty the way an adult does. What children understand is love. And you can't have love without sacrifice. It's not possible. And that's part of the problem, where love becomes sexual only. Now, that's a dimension of love. It's an expression of love. But where there's no sacrifice, there can be no love. And you can't be in a relationship without love. And it becomes a transactional relationship, or a commercial relationship, or a relationship that is just there because it's the status quo, or that's what we are supposed to do. And so you can see all the things that can mess up a young man. There are just many. So, but it's critical that if you didn't have a good father, become one. There are some things that must not be perpetuated through a bloodline. It must stop somewhere. And if you don't stop it, it's going to go on to your children, who will abuse their wives and, abuse other girls and things. And it just keeps on keeping on. And society is not the safer for it.
How does one ensure that you don't transfer certain proclivities to the next generation?
At least be aware of them.
Be aware.
And then number 2, don't buy into funky philosophy. I was in a cab the other time, and one guy was boasting that his father on his dying bed said, you can't marry one wife. You have to marry, double wives or triple wives and everything. And it was, yes, in law you call that dying declaration, which is supposed to have more potency than normal declarations, and everything. And I was looking at this young man, and your father that said that was trying to cure a problem that he had because he couldn't control your mother. So he decided that the way to control a woman was to marry multiple wives. And then it's making your life an experiment of something that he himself never practiced, never knew anything about and everything. And that man is committed because at that point he had already married 2 or 3 wives.
Oh my goodness.
Now, how do you deal with that? Funky philosophy. Because a lot of what we do is based on a psychology and a philosophy of existence. It's a philosophy you buy into. And what the Bible does is that it provides a philosophical basis for you to be a success in life. So, for example, you find that the Bible incidentally and ironically contains books like Proverbs. It contains books like Ecclesiastes. It contains books like Song of Solomon. So, Song of Solomon deals with romance. Proverbs deals with common sense. Ecclesiastes deals with a philosophical posture of life. So God expects you to be philosophically attuned. He expects you to be romantic to your wife, and he expects you to have common sense.
Wow.
If you
common
don't
sense.
Common sense. Because Proverbs is about common sense.
Wow. A Proverbs a day keeps you away from foolishness all month long.
It does. It does. It does.
Mr. Howard, are there categories of men, because now you're saying that some people grow up with funky philosophies, like the man you referenced, whose father decided to turn his life to a guinea pig.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he's not alive to assess the success of whatever experiment he subjected that boy to.
It's a stupid model. Think about it. You can't superimpose one marriage on another. There will be no perfect match. The father married a particular type of woman. This boy is not marrying exactly the same type of woman, yet he's trying to cure a problem that his father had with his own resources and different set of circumstances. How does that play out? And we do that. We do that. We use other people's experience to determine the progression of our lives. It doesn't make sense. You're a unique being,
yes,
fashioned by a unique God, and you're going to marry a unique woman, and you're going to have unique experiences and unique children. So how do you superimpose? I mean, it's like artists do, or when you superimpose one thing on top of another. How does that operate? It's so illogical and so asinine. Yet people do it.
Okay, so back to my question. Are there categories of men, or are there differences in men?
I think the problem most of the time, there are 2 dimensions to it. Manhood is not easy. There are expectations of society. I know we're living in a gender-balanced society and everything, but the fact still remains that there are those expectations. And they seem ingrained in young men and men, so almost genetic and almost primordial. And the ultimate thing about manhood is the ability to take ultimate responsibility, moral responsibility. Some men don't want to take that kind of responsibility. But the second dimension is the inability to access all the dimensions of manhood. I'll be speaking about that in the church when I come.
Fantastic.
And it's modeled on the personage of Jesus Christ, who operates on many dimensions. I've been telling pastors, for example, that they're not preaching the full gospel. That what they're preaching is 1/3 of the gospel.
Wow.
That there are 3 dimensions to Jesus Christ. There's a creative, intellectual dimension. The guy that we met in Genesis, in whom all the wisdom, and all the God bodily resides and everything is the wisdom of God. So cosmology, quantum physics, chemistry, everything is resident in him. And it's the one that we find in Genesis creating, because the Bible says by him were all things created, and without him was nothing ever created. So the laws of gravity, because the Bible says that they oppose all things together by the word of his power. Therefore, gravity is an expression of that word of his power. So there's that dimension of Jesus. Then we have the compassionate dimension of Jesus. That's the guy who raised the dead. That's the guy who fed the poor. That's the guy who heals us and is compassionate towards us and everything. That's the God that we preach. But it's one-third the gospel. Then there's a political dimension of Jesus Christ.
King of kings and Lord of lords.
King of kings, Lord of lords is the guy that we meet in Revelation. So all three dimensions have to be preached for it to have a balanced manhood and a balanced gospel.
Wow.
So we have to, a lot of people can't explore that.
Wow.
So you have to be creative with your children. You have to lead them intellectually. You have to be compassionate to your children, because you can't be a father without love. And then it's a political dimension of fatherhood and everything. And we're going to look at all those kinds of things.
Wow, we're counting down. We're counting down. We're counting down. So still on this issue of man and manhood, I wrote something that I said, is it possible to have I said it is possible to have the mind of a baby trapped in the body of an adult?
Oh yeah, there are many people like that, undeveloped minds, undeveloped maturity, maturization. There are people who just never grow up. Part of it is because they were never exposed and they were never allowed to do things on their own. They were over-sheltered. There are people who can't survive on their own.
Shielded.
Yeah, especially if you are surrounded by so many girls and so many women. And in some families, the women are so strong that some of the men end up being emasculated because they are not able to assert themselves through strong womanhood. So you have all that going on, and
wow. Okay, so what is the process of evolution from childhood to real adulthood? You've mentioned one, exposure to responsibilities and all of that.
I think at a certain point in life, you have to take moral responsibility for your life, for your choices, and for and you have to know that those choices have consequences. Let me give you a typical example. When I finished university, my father was a civil servant, a very, very good man. My father in those days, as far back as secondary school, my father would rather wear rags for me to buy Italian shoes or Italian suits. So I wore Italian materials all through university. The shoes that I wore in secondary school in King's College, I successfully wore in university. You're talking Giorgio Brutini and all those kinds of things. He didn't mind, because to him, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Wow.
Okay, so there are fathers like that, but not everybody has that opportunity. Not everybody has that advantage. So, but when I came out of university, I decided that I would never take one kobo more from my father.
That the moment you came out?
Immediately I finished university, I said I would never take one kobo more from him. Now that forced me to care for myself more. Now I'd already started businesses in university and all those things, but I just felt that it was unfair that this man had tried and had sacrificed so much that it was time for him to stop and enjoy his life and enjoy his money. And then the kind of ambition that I had anyway, there was no way he could finance it because he was a honest civil servant. So I had to make money to start my own business, because in those days venture capital was not available and all these things were not available. And I made sure that while he lived, he never suffered and he never lacked. You have to get to that point in which you make a determination to take responsibility for the affairs of your life and not rely on other people. Until you make that determination, and it's a real determination, you're not going to advance much. You're only going to, it's like somebody who knows that he has credit facility in a bank. He would never put his foot down and say, you know what, let's work for this thing.
He knows he has to fall back.
There's always a fallback and everything.
Because
some cases, I've even seen grandparents that educate their grandchildren. They're the ones who pay school fees. That is emasculated manhood.
Wow. Wow.
Where you're supposed to be taking care of your father, and your father is the one taking care of you and taking care of your children. There's something wrong. The children will never look up to you for fatherhood. They will always look up to the grandfather.
Wow. So you have the form, but you lack the functionality.
Yeah, because again, I keep on saying it. It has nothing to do with. It has nothing to do with
Biology.
sex. It's a political function. Fatherhood is a political office. That is why you find that when fatherhood fails according to sex, the woman steps in and brings up children that are okay. Because fatherhood is a political office. It's not biological procreation. It's not the ability to impregnate a girl or to impregnate so many women. That's not fatherhood. Even the rats can do that. You know, they impregnate. You know, so what's the difference between you and a monkey? So that's not fatherhood. That cannot be fatherhood. In the Bible, you're going to find out that there are those that were listed as so and so begat, and so and so begat, and so and so begat. And there's nothing recorded against their names. They're just what you call historical pins, you know, the historical staples. They staple one generation to the other and no other achievement. Wow. You don't want to be like that. Nobody respects that kind of person.
Wow. So what qualifies a man for marriage?
Manhood. You know, it's funny, you know, when you read Book of Ecclesiastes and all those books and Song of Songs, you find that they will be rated 16 or 18 at this time, which means that romance is...
Wow.
You got to be economically viable, because economics matter in marriage. You got to be able to take responsibility for people and other people, you know, and everything. You've got to be able to have your own mind and be able to make, because some of the things that destroy marriage are because people, they don't have their own mind. Your mother becomes a local government chairman in your home and effectively emasculates your wife and destroys your home. And there are too many young men who cannot face their mother. And it's understandable, because mothers can be scary, you know.
And they can be territorial too.
It's very territorial. And they would not, some mother...
Apologies, women.
No, it's okay to be territorial. I mean, you have to defend your territory. Yes, if I'm a woman, I'm not going to allow another woman to walk into my home and destroy my home. Whether my mother-in-law or whatever, it is wrong. But you see, it's not the daughter-in-law that should be fighting those battles. It is the son that should be able to stand up against his family and say, I will not allow this. This woman and I are one. You can't separate us. And mommy, you have your home. This is my wife's home, because the home belongs to the woman. That's why in America, when there's a problem, it's the man who packs out.
Wow. Okay, so I was going to ask that, do the needs of men change after marriage?
That do what?
Do the needs of men change after marriage from what it was while they were dating?
Well, you go through, first of all, when you are dating, you hardly know anything anyway, because it has pleased God to hide some things about marriage from young men, or else nobody will marry. You know,
so there is no way you're going to know certain things.
No, you can't, because if you calculate school fees and you knew all that, you won't want to marry. You know?
Oh my goodness.
But you are changing.
Yes.
Your wife is changing. The environment is changing. So you have this complex dynamics of change that is going on. And you got to be able to respond dynamically to those changes. And not many people can. So, for example, when you met her, maybe you were driving a small car. And then you got to be able to handle wealth now that you've been promoted. Not everybody can handle that. Now, the problem is that most people don't prepare themselves for those things. They think that those things are automatic. You know, the same way that lawyers think that coming out of law school automatically means that you're an entrepreneur. It's not true, you know. So we tend to assume that once we get to a certain age, we must marry, and success in marriage is automatic. No, it's stereotypes, and it doesn't work that way. There's nothing that is good that you don't work at, even with the grace of God. Because there are preconditionalities for the grace of God. You must qualify yourself for those graces. You know, if you don't qualify yourself, it just doesn't work.
Paul said, I do not take the grace of God in vain. So grace can be wasted.
Oh, it can. It can. And so there are people who have, you know, the people that are even the most endangered lot are the gifted. Because they are used to licenses, they are used to taking things for granted. And because people adulate them, there are no breaks, and there's nobody to put checks and balances on them. And so it becomes a problem. And they don't know how to handle their fame, they don't know how to handle their gifts, they don't know how to handle the consequences of those gifts. And so the fame and the gifts destroy them,
Wow.
rather than them become a gift to the world.
Wow.
Now, there's something about worship, because all these things have to do with worship. Man was not designed to receive worship. Only God has the ability to absorb infinite worship. And so, when men are adulated, they react badly. That is why in Christianity, you give the glory back to God. Because all power, all glory, all honor belongs unto God. So if you don't learn to give it up, you're going to get lost, and you're going to start thinking that your head is big, and all those kind of things, and you're actually going to become pig-headed, and everything. And then there's something about young men and confidence and money. Give a young man a very good car, and some money and everything, and he feels that he can jam anybody.
He thinks he's invincible.
He thinks he's invincible. He doesn't know anything about life, So there are a lot of people that are basing their confidence on false notions and false factors and things like that, and that's not manhood. That's not manhood. Manhood is not the ability to break the heart of 10 girls. I mean, that is you're a wreck. Because these things also affect you. Manhood is not the ability to sleep with 10 girls. Impregnate 10 girls. That's not manhood. That's a foolish definition of manhood. Because you are going to end up being so confused anyway. And then chances are you are going to marry the wrong person. And because you are aggregating all those factors together and all the dimensions of all the girls together, and you think it's resident in one woman, and then when you marry the woman, you find that and she is not there, Biola is not there, God is not there. I mean, I've seen people marry and then start calling old girlfriend that they turned down. Because they came to a sudden realization and a shock.
So at times women, at times are frustrated. And they're saying, what exactly do men want? What do men want?
I think it's a wrong question.
Okay.
I don't think there's a universal question about what do men want. All you can say is that what does Tunde want? Okay. What does John want? Okay. What does Chioma want or something? I don't think there's anything about men
because,
wanting.
I'm thinking that it seems like men love, or in a man's world, love is spelled as respect. And in a woman's world, maybe love is spelled as attention, as affection. That maybe it's the reason why some men sleep with their secretaries. When they get courtesy and they misinterpret courtesy for love. And they become vulnerable to anything that is a source of admiration for them.
Part of the problem is that success isolates you.
Okay, success isolates you.
It isolates you. So proximity breeds relationship. So you have to be mindful of those two laws, and everything. But
success isolates you. Proximity breeds relationship.
Because if you keep seeing somebody regularly and everything, you tend to want to look for good things in them, and unless they are patently bad, you tend to want to see good things in them. And then, it's a demand and supply equation. So you have and Satan is very good in economics. It gives you demand and then supplies, creates demand and supplies. So it creates a problem in your home and then it gives you supply outside.
Wow.
And then the loss of demand and supply begin to operate in your life.
And say that again, sir.
It gives you problems at home, but it gives you the supply outside. Through the law of proximity.
Through the law of proximity.
Yeah, and you have to be careful because one of the key attributes of manhood is discipline. And if you don't learn how to discipline those things, you are going to mess up your life. It's so easy for a young man who has access to women to impregnate about 3 or 4 women over a period of 1 week. It's so easy. All of them needs to do is just to be ready to bear children, and the hormonal things are there. Yes, so easy. That's how a lot of young artists end up messing themselves up.
Having baby mamas.
Yeah, which is a concept we have to fight as a society.
Wow.